Hey Empowered Couples, today's episode is all about partner expectations, what you need and what you want in a relationship. Because at some point in your partnership, you likely realize that you have expectations of your partner or that they have expectations of you.
And maybe you've shared your needs and wants, or maybe you never have, so this is a new way to look at it.
And it's funny because when we start dating someone, we don't sit them down and go, honey, let me tell you everything I expect of you.
Yeah, that's not sexy.
Right, it's not a sexy conversation. However, you bring those expectations into your relationship whether you want to or not. So today's conversation is going to be all about how to uncover them as well as talk about them with your partner so that you aren't demanding things of them, but you actually know what each of you need in the relationship so that you can be even better partners.
And if you haven't met us, we are the Freemans. We personally coach and lead workshops for couples to get the relationship skills they need to be a true power couple that you're probably never taught. And we are joined in the studio today by Patrick and Carrie Antrim. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
this is so fun.
Yeah.
And just so the audience now knows a little bit more about you, you both are media entrepreneurs. And I love this because you're out to help industry leaders and visionaries and forward-looking companies scale their business and their impact through video.
Yeah,
That's right.
I think it's interesting. I mean, we're talking about relationships, and in business, we're transferring knowledge, and obviously video, even more important today in doing that. And so it's great to be here with you guys.
Yeah, and then you then obviously leverage that platform in your own industry, right? Being in multifamily and real estate, so you leverage and are even disruptors in the real estate multifamily sector by leveraging video. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah.
Obviously that means with your 4 kids total in your blended family, being together 5 years and being married for 1 year, there may be some expectations that you have around that whole world. So let's start off with value right from the beginning. Sitting here today, have you realized that you now have an expectation that you never really expressed in the past? And then what impact had that been having?
Yeah, so it's a great question because sometimes we don't realize these expectations until you really start to focus on it, right? Like, and I know when we came to your workshop, we got that clarity. All this time we had been going around with, you can look at the brain science of subconscious behavior and things like that, but until you step back and really focus on, I think, your relationship, you really don't bring to awareness some of these automatic pilot type things that are guiding you. And in fact, me, from my background, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I grew up in sort of growth mode all the time. And so for me, spending time with Carrie when in the first part of the relationship where it's all exciting, we're traveling, we're doing all these fun things, and she's highly expressive, and we're not really coaching each other we're just enjoying and learning about each other. And what I had learned early is that as those sort of things in the seasons of what you do early in the relationship, it's not that it fatigues, but it evolves into something new. You do buying homes together, you're working together and things like that. And so for me, it was, I didn't know the expectations I might have placed on her business and professional. Like, when someone brings me a problem as a coach, I want to help them. I care about them. I want to solve it. I want to just jump in and fix, And so for me, it was like, expecting, Carrie to, respond and react like someone that's raising their hand for next level. So I had to really kind of retool how I communicate.
I love that too. Even before you jump in, Carrie, we have so many expectations about how each of us communicate. And you often can want your partner to communicate exactly like you do. And did you notice that in your communication, like how you expected him to talk to you and vice versa?
Absolutely. Like he said, I'm sure in the beginning I was very expressive. You want to impress each other, and you have lots of stories to tell. You know that when you're together for a long period of time, like you've told the stories, you've heard the things before. And so I think that I got into a pattern of just expecting him to be the communicator and the expressive one. And I'm sure that that probably, I can imagine wouldn't feel very good when, you feel like you're not being heard because maybe I'm not as expressive as I once was, or I know that he does like to fix and coach, and that's wonderful. I'm, in some situations I'm not there. Like, I just listen, and I want to be there and be supportive, and I might not be jumping in, well, here's what we can do, and here's the solution,
Well, question on that. Did you have an expectation that he'd ask you questions? Like he'd prompt you in a way, or did you just think he was going to always be the one talking?
You know, I think I probably thought that he's pretty much going to be the one who's doing the talking. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How awesome. Did you guys ever talk about that? Or was it just kind of how the behavior started to...
Honestly, and we just recently went to your workshop, and honestly, from that, we saw all the work you guys were doing online and with, impact with other families and relationships. And so it kind of allowed us to go, hey, we've been doing this in our business. We've been professionally developing others and ourselves in our business. The money we spend to invest in ourselves is ridiculous in business, but then... So we just raised our hands to do it, with you guys as a relationship. That's how much we sort of care about the success of it. Not that there's problems or anything like that, but it's like we want to apply it that same way. And so I think going through that process brought a lot of this awareness. Like we didn't really have a lot of clarity around that until really, because we're usually the ones facilitating. It was nice to be part of an attendee.
So nice.
That experience,
Yes.
and honestly, that's not something we've ever shared together.
No, it was a great experience.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll go on a business journey, and Carrie will learn something, and we kind of do it differently. But this was the first time we were able to do something like that for ourselves. On with the alignment of our relationship, not business.
Isn't it interesting? One thing, and I know you want to jump in as well. Unless we're given the tools to talk about what you need, like even the prompts, most people just don't even know to do it. They're just like, oh, you'll figure it out, right? And don't set each other up for success, and almost think like, well, if we get along and we like the same things, that'll be enough. Whereas we kind of talk about the philosophy, since you two are so much into business. Everyone who works, like co-founders, they would sit down with each other and create very clear expectations of each other. They would talk about every employee knows what is expected of them. But then this partnership, which you literally sign a contract, merge money, buy house, like there's a lot of liability in getting married.
Right.
You don't sit down and create that kind of clarity. It's just such an interesting societal thing, don't you think?
Well, it makes me think, and even for the audience too, that you start a relationship versus starting a business, right? So starting a business, you kind of have the understanding that it's going to always evolve. Your customer base is going to evolve, how you're going to offer your products and service, how you're going to reach people. So you come in with the mentality like, okay, we're always going to evolve, so we've got to be looking out for the things to get better. But in a relationship, and tell me if you found this the same, it does seem like when it starts, you just seem like it's all going to work itself out. Right. You get into this marriage, you're excited, you're learning about each other, there's fun, there's excitement, there's love present, and then you just think that that's always going to be there, right? And you don't necessarily come in with the mindset of, I'm going to have new expectations come up, and I'm going to have needs that maybe I haven't expressed before, right?
Right.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And I love what you guys talk about disappearing disappointments, and like you said, things pop up where you're not even expecting it. You're like, wait, why am I disappointed right now? Like what was that expectation I had that wasn't met? And like you said, does he even know? Does he know that I needed this certain, word or comfort?
Well, when you guys were both dating, what did you know you needed in a relationship? Like what are your basic needs for a partnership?
I think for me personally, security, knowing that loyalty, faithfulness, just honesty, things like that. Communication, of course. I think that those are probably pretty basic for most relationships. I don't know. I'm not the expert.
No, but it's good to hear from you, like what it is, because you can date, but then it's like what besides what they like to do and everything, it's like what are we kind of looking for? Yeah,
I mean, of course, shared interests and things like that. Like you said, that helps and everything, but it's really the core values, and I think Patrick and I share very similar core values in what we believe, like our belief statements.
What are your basic needs in a relationship?
Well, I would say the same. That's why this relationship works so well. It's very same. I mean, we want to be with people that you love and respect, but also love and respect you, and that's important. But I think for me, it's really being clear about the life we want to live first, and someone that's okay with designing a life versus just living a life that they're reacting to. And so we spent a lot of time in engagement and a lot of time dating to make sure that we were aligned on all the right things. And we weren't really compromising on anything. It was just naturally, and how we did that was traveling. We went from New York to different cities around the country to getaway, spontaneous trips that we learned how we like to spend days and afternoons and dance and all these different things. And so for me, if there was an expectation on my side of it, it would be, having the ability to constantly be in a spirit of growth, if that be spiritual for the relationship, or and then getting better ourselves. In other words, not just me or our business getting better, but Carrie actually going to a new level, getting outside of her fears, growing as a human. And then the benefit of that is, ultimately for me, was I wanted my boys to know what it was like to have a healthy relationship. Okay, and so that was one of the tools that I knew, like, she's from Ohio and I'm born in Nebraska, and there's just some certain qualities around the core foundations of what I believe in, and that was kind of...
Well, you know what's interesting about what you said is you have a need and a desire in the relationship to grow, as opposed to, what's interesting, a lot of people, maybe this is you expect your partner to stay the same. So it's almost like you have, which is what couples who do personal development are looking for differently. I know a lot of people who are like, you've changed, like that's a bad thing.
Right.
As opposed to,
of course,
you've changed, you're evolving, you're growing. So I love that was something you were looking for.
Just a quick question, and it actually reminds me of such a great point. When I was starting my own personal development journey, which was primarily at Jocelyn's invitation when we first got together.
Very strong invitation.
Yeah. I spent all the years in college and have an advanced degree even, let alone now, what's interesting actually as I reflect on this is there's like the education that I got, and that was my idea of growth. But once I got into personal development, it was like now all of a sudden I started to pursue things like being a public speaker or leadership or coaching or spiritual growth. Like those were all these things I didn't really realize were there. And Jocelyn was really the one that invited me into that, to start to look at growing as an individual. And so when that started to happen for me, I had other people in my life that actually came to me and said, you're not the same person that we knew you as. And I wanted to say, good, I'm so glad. But they actually took that as something that was bad, or something that was like Jocelyn causing me to be a different person. So either way, for the people in your life maybe, or for each other, have you ever got to that point where you sort of resisted change in each other, rather than just being open to like, oh, I'm actually looking forward to growing together, rather than you're not the same person anymore?
Right. Well, I think that's so interesting. Patrick mentioned he has an entrepreneurial background his whole life. I'm exactly the opposite. So, my mom worked at the library for 30 years. My grandma was a teacher for 30 years. Like, you collect your retirement, your pension, and that's what you work for. And so when I met him and he's like, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I do this and this and this and I'm in the multifamily industry. And I was like, oh, what's this? Okay. And so I think that right off the bat, luckily for him and for me, I was open to it, but boy, was it a jump. I didn't really know about personal development, personal growth, I went to college, I was on the path. Like, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, you do it until you can retire.
And then you made it.
Yeah. And you made it, right? And then I meet him and he's like, well, it's a Wednesday. What should we do? Should we, pack up our bags and go on a road trip? And I was like, okay.
Or how about a seminar this weekend instead of the beach,
exactly.
Something different.
Yeah. So he really opened my eyes to all these, this whole world that I didn't even know
And why do you think
existed.
some couples resist that? I'd like to hear from both of you, because again, we're distinguishing right now, I love this, the difference between the couples that expect each other to stay the same versus the couples that I want to be with someone who's changing with me. Why do you think some couples resist that?
Well, I'll tell you the word submit. I've submitted to honor her first for the family that we're leading, so the children see, leadership in a home. But I think also Carrie, and I don't want to speak for you, but just by your
can
routines. I think she appreciates leadership. And I always want to. I'm expressive, so I'm going to introduce like, hey, ideas around business or buying a home and all these different things. So I'm going to run all the variables. Like, well, we could Airbnb it, we can find it, we could take out, we could do all these different things. And she's just like, just I'm with you. So I think that's important, is to just trust that we're all making the decision for the best interests of each other and the family unit and what you're trying to create together. But having that clarity helps those decisions. Otherwise, it's, why'd you do that? There's sort of a tug and pull there. I haven't seen that with Carrie, and that makes it easy to be in a relationship with when the other person doesn't make it hard work.
You're not resisting each other's personalities.
Right.
Which is what we see a lot.
Right. Because I appreciate, like when she talks about her mom being a teacher and librarians and sort of the structured, disciplined, save money, this is what you have, work with this mindset is favorable. It's dynamic, and it's not that's wrong or the other one is right. It's just that when you balance the two, you end up having the ability to be in a position of strength. Like right now, we just had some events that nobody was preparing for, and we're in a great position to really help step up clarity, step up leadership. And had we been operating with scarcity, I wouldn't have invested in the media company. I wouldn't have invested in the equipment and the studio and these types of things. And we would be looking at, will we be doing business in this way versus, we took a leap, made totally outside your comfort zone, I would imagine. But it's actually really it's that safe, and I was talking to a friend of mine, is safe is the new risk. So having that balance for me is like a check, because growing up an entrepreneur family, my dad was an entrepreneur, but back before it was cool. Entrepreneurs back then, and they had bad credit. They didn't, nobody wanted to lend you money, and it was different. And so for me, at the deep root, it's like, it's scary being an entrepreneur, but it's also, that's why the balance of having somebody that thinks simple, and not that you think simple, but like...
No. Well, I think I'm hearing is like balance. Someone on board with your vision.
She's on board with the vision, but we also balance out so we don't get too far off the the trail.
There's a large amount of trust. I mean, he's got all my trust, 100%. I trust him no matter what. And I think in the beginning, given my background, that was probably harder. And I'm sure that I don't remember a specific instance, but I'm sure he came to me and was like, this is what we're going to do. And probably in my head, I'm like,
that's a big risk. Or it felt risky.
I trust you
and I may have resisted. And I've learned, just by being with him and knowing him, that I don't have to worry. I trust him implicitly. So there's no resistance anymore. Like you were saying, like, oh, our business is changing, you're changing. Cool. Bring it on. I'm ready, you know.
Well, I want to pause right here, because this is a great place for the audience to pause and look for themselves, because I think one of the places that people have expectations that then go unexpressed and then ultimately unmet, which is where disappointments come in, is leadership. And actually having the conversation of your expectations on who is going to lead. And it's not just lead the relationship, right? Because who's going to lead maybe the finances, who's going to lead us in our intimacy or spirituality or financially or in family or in business. So you actually have all these places. So even just for the audience to pause and say, have we talked about who's going to be the leader of that particular area of our relationship? Because maybe you have these different views on, you can have very traditional or conventional leadership where, let's say, the female would lean on the male, and maybe in all the areas, to say, hey, make the decision, and I'm going to just more trust. Versus, I think a lot more couples desire to be in the place of what's called equalitarian.
Well, I like to call it co-leadership.
Which is co-leading, but maybe they haven't brought that conversation up or known how. So I actually wanted to just have the audience look at that for themselves, but what would be the best way for them to actually bring that up? How do I bring up this conversation that could be difficult on co-leading or being even in a more traditional leadership?
Well, it's interesting because for me, that's all I do all day long. So when I come home, I love when others lead. Like that's when you're a good leader, when others are leading. Like you know what I'm saying. So I think for me that could be an unmet expectation is that we're working together to build a family, and Carrie might be waiting for me to lead, but to me, I've been leading all day at work or coaching people and leading, and I'm tired of, exhausted, and it's like,
You're like, I want more decisions.
That's why deciding where to eat is sometimes
seriously.
very difficult. Where do you want to eat?
Seriously.
I don't know. Where do you want to eat? I don't know. You decide. No, you decide.
so I mean, it's playful, but yeah, I mean, it's but you don't step back and actually, you just kind of work through the collateral damage from indecision and things like that when those things are
And
happening.
what Erin and I do too that might be interesting for all of you to explore is we actually talk about it kind of per situation. So rather than being like, you're the leader of life in general or our home life or business life, it's kind of like, hey, we're going to work on this trip. Do you want to lead in that planning, or should I lead? Or hey, with finances, do you want to, we kind of segmented it into all these other places so that it's very clear of like who's going to lead a certain project or a certain topic. Wouldn't you say that's what we do?
Yeah, and just a question came to me, is there a particular area that you would love to lead in?
We're pretty traditional. I think, like he said, he leads all day long at work. And so when we get home, I pretty much lead the household things, the cooking, cleaning dishes, the more, kind of traditional role. And I think, of course there are times when I'm like, I can't do it today. I don't want to, but that is actually one of the ways that I serve my family, whether I want to or not, clean up the laundry or whatever it is. I don't know if that answers your question. Was that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
And it just made me think of, what about, since a lot of couples are parents, how about like the discipline? Do you find that one of you sort of leads in the discipline and the decision making for when the kids either misbehave or things like that, or do you have more of a co-leading around that too?
I think we're pretty good co-leaders with that.
Pretty much.
We're on the same page, which with our discipline of the kids, and kind of how we want a growth mindset for all four of them, and so we try to lead conversations and situations in that manner.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, because they're in school and they're hearing from friends and they're hearing, limitations and things like that. And so, we kind of step in on those conversations when, somebody comes in and says, I can't make the team, or, or I didn't get picked or whatever. It's like, oh, wait a minute, like, picked for what? And we kind of work them through, like, you're not trying to make this team, you're trying to make that team, and just kind of working through different scenarios with the children.
One thing I wanted to go back to, you brought up about kind of going again to needs and wants. Like, what are your needs and wants and expectations in your relationship? You mentioned your needs and wants around what kind of life you want to live. And I find that really interesting because, again, we've talked to thousands and thousands of couples, and it's like, oh, why did you guys get together? And they're like, we both like the same movies, they're nice, they're smart, all those surface level things, which are great and awesome. But we said, well, did you ever talk about what you want life to look like? No, I don't think so. I mean, I know we both want to buy a house, but you two have talked about, like, what is our vision? What is life going to look like? Tell us more about those needs, because you're meeting the base needs of trust, loyalty, faith, all of those things. But then you have these aspirational needs that Erin talks about. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, and we've spent a lot of time discussing this, which is, a lot of times what Carrie said, kind of evolve, go to school, get a job, all that, save up and work for somebody. I think we were really clear, being that when we came together, we were both single parents. And so freedom over time and money is a major component. You can write a check to solve a problem. You don't have a problem. So that was one of the things was, first, let's achieve, right? And when we achieve, let's not, because there's plenty of opportunities to go out and be a CEO of a company and spend 13 weeks traveling. And I retired early in professional sports because I knew I wanted to be leading my family, not gone, things like that. And so I think there's a lot of clarity around how we want to spend our time and energy. And so we're still in that growth mode, but we're enjoying that journey along the way. But I think that's, again, more important in that clarity is just getting clear on, what does that look like? And for us, it was what we were doing when we were dating. We traveled, we spent time together, and there's not any moments where we're tired of each other, or we don't fatigue. We enjoy all the different things, and so we kind of had to experience it and immerse ourselves in it. And then instead of me selling, carry on it, it's more like, look what we've been doing. Let's keep doing that, type of thing.
Well, and the need to create an extraordinary life. You talked about that, a life by design. And it's interesting because I was with a partner before Aaron where there were a lot of the surface level things in common.
What? You were with someone before?
Yeah, before you. Only one. But he had a lot of the same surface level things as Aaron. Again, the characteristics. But one of the needs that I didn't have met was I didn't get to be big in the relationship. I didn't get to be fully me, fully express big dreams, and I kind of had to suppress that because of just the dynamic that it created energetically. You kind of butt heads this way, and that need is so met in this relationship, which I just want to thank you for.
Aww.
You let me be big and you let me be myself, and you two let each other be you, which I think is so amazing that you do in your relationship.
What's interesting, and I'll add to what Patrick said about having a vision. Before I met him, I didn't dream big. I would see oh, look at that mansion, look at that house, it's amazing, look at that car. I'm not a materialistic person, but I didn't dream those things for myself. I just didn't ever let myself, because I don't want to dream that and then it not happen, or things like that. And so meeting him, he was like, why can't we have that house? We can have it, we can do it. It's you. Of course you can dream that, or why can't we go on that vacation? Of course we can. It's funny, he, on one of our first dates, we went to play blackjack. And I, had never really, I knew the game, how to play or whatever. And I think he probably...
First dates?
One of our...
I don't think we went to play
I think not on our first date.
First date.
It was in the beginning.
You really probably see
I'm
someone's
pretty
character.
sure we were at Grazia.
No, that was our first date. Not our very first date. We didn't play blackjack. One of our first dates.
One of our...
early on in the relationship, he took me to play blackjack. And, we're playing, and we had our chips, and I'm betting $5 or something, and I think he probably put down $100 chip. My heart dropped, because that's $100 on the table right there. What if you don't? And he was like, Carrie, it's not $100 bill. It's a chip. It's not. It's just a chip. It's just a chip. Everything's gonna be okay. And it wasn't. And we had a great time. But it was just
you thinking a bigger and abundantly.
Yes. And that was just not something I was familiar with at all. And it opened up a whole new world for me.
Well, one thing I'm taking away is, all too often, and I think every single one of us and all couples are probably fall into this category, but one of the things I'm even learning from both of you is you can look at the life that you desire to live, and you can either say, I have the resources, or we have the resources and ability to live that life, or not. Well, I don't have that now, so I guess I can't live that life. That's really nice for them, that they can live that life. And I can even get a sense for you thinking that's not the life I was meant for.
Right.
And then you can be kind of disappointed or just go back. And maybe this is an impact that Patrick has had kind of talking about a vision for your life is, you say, whatever vision you want, let's just paint the picture. Let's dream it.
Yes.
Then we'll figure out how to get the resources. We'll figure out what we need to do.
Yeah.
So that's such a simple shift, but such a huge shift.
Huge shift.
For couples. And would you say you were sort of born with that sort of dream and then figured out mentality, or was there something that happened to you?
I think it comes from, there's a couple of things that come from, I've worked for supremely wealthy families managing $1 billion of their portfolio, and I saw the way they think. I saw their habits. I see how they build companies and cultures, and I also saw the collateral damage to not having centered around family and being sort of driven just off of transactions. So I'm curious, like I pay attention to what's happening around me. And so paying attention to those sort of wealthy families, knowing what's the great in that, when I see people that are trying to do big things in economic worlds, there's people that love it and there's people that hate it. But being able to write a check to expand a hospital or, start a charity and do those kinds of things is another level of giving back that a lot of people don't experience until they think bigger. And so I think for me, just being around that environment was important. And then secondly, for 18 years, I did these things for these families, and I still manage some wealth for uniquely people that everybody knows that they know. I don't market these things, but they come by referrals. And this process that I go through in working with these families and just in transactional real estate and stuff, the secrets are there. Like you can see where it all happens. But for me, I was on top of my game in probably 2008, making a lot of money and a lot of people telling me I'm great and, in charge of, 150 employees all across the country. And the credit markets changed and, life became uniquely different for me. And only because I started my own business in 2009. And so I was basically an entrepreneur in one of the worst credit crunches, access to capital, people did not want to spend money. The world was scared and scarcity mindset and everything. And here I am trying to build something new and being a single father. So I think it's having that sort of scared mentality, the studio that we've built, the platform, the equipment, the teams that we've built have been because I've been afraid of what if people don't want to go to events anymore. I spent time with Tony Robbins at his house, and he brought me and his partner in, who has been best friends with him for 10 years, and they're training Tony's team on how to. Tony literally said this. He's got enough wealth to just
he doesn't have to keep going.
When I heard his heart in front of his team, this wasn't a public event, not a paid. This is his team growing the growth strategy. When I heard him say to his team that I don't need this. I'm doing this for you guys, the company, the employees of his company. And basically they're saying, hey, we need something like this because in 9/11, people didn't want to travel.
Right.
So now you're doing live events and these kind of things. And so they had the vision to create something that had real value, to do things even if people couldn't show up, or travel or get things. And I've sort of got me thinking big about, okay, I'm doing events, I'm doing these things a couple of years. Here's the risk in that. Okay, so we invested in the media company on using video to tell stories, using video to introduce products, using video to do thought leadership, and online events, things like that. And so now here we are in a situation very similar to 9/11 in terms of the panic.
Yeah.
Not the lives, and I don't want to compare. That's not respectful. But in terms of Disneyland being shut down,
The NBA,
NBA, baseball being canceled, all that stuff, you have that same uncertainty that the world's feeling right now. And I live with that every day.
Innovator.
Yeah,
I live with that every day.
I want to ask a question about that because I actually remember the story Tony was talking about. He was leading an event on 9/11 in Hawaii, I believe, like literally standing in front of the room, and the towers got hit. And now he's in a room of like thousands of people with that type of fear, and he talks about how he was able to lead that group, right? So we've talked so much about sharing your own needs and desires and the expectations of yourself and of your partner in the relationship, but this is so interesting to me. How do you manage as a couple the outside world expectations and not allowing that to negatively influence you and then your partner which I think is so just apropos to where we are in the world right now.
Even like an expectation of how there's a honeymoon phase. You know, there's that mentality, or like that relationships get more boring over time. Like that's a societal expectation.
Only if you don't recreate them, right?
Yeah. So how do you kind of keep out the world's expectations of your relationship? That
I'm not even sure if it's keep out, right?
Or just,
they might just be there, but how do you either
The
manage
news
it? How do you work
and all that,
through
it comes at you. You don't have to subscribe to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to give any comments to that, but like what's happening even now, I mean, I have my thoughts. But
or even
I
like
wanna-
friends. You know, something we changed early on in our relationship was who we let into our sphere, including couples we hang out with, because we would have friends that talked trash about their partner and they don't do this, but then they wouldn't have a straightforward conversation with their partner. So we were like, who are we letting influence our relationship? Did
Absolutely.
you do
Yeah,
that
I
as
think
well?
that among women specifically, it's a societal norm that people think we get together and we gossip and we talk trash, like you said, about our husbands or boyfriends or whatever, our spouses, and that's just accepted and almost expected. And it's disturbing to me because, man, can you imagine how much it would hurt your husband to hear you saying these terrible things? And then what does it look like on you? Like, it's just, so there are certain things like that, our marriage is our marriage, and we share, this type of information, that can be helpful, but, what happens in your marriage is between you and your spouse. And
maybe a resource, a helpful resource.
Right. I think that balancing, what you're hearing in the media and seeing on TV.
I know, right? The Bachelor and all those relationship shows.
You really just have to keep in check with yourself and your partner. Like I said, we have very strong values that we share, and if it doesn't fit in our value system, it doesn't come in our house. I don't watch the news. I don't listen to the news. I try not to see the news. Obviously if something big happens, I'm aware of it, But as far as, just, I don't need that in my life. I need positivity. I need growth. I need all the good mojo. Because why not?
Yeah. Well, I
Why
have
wouldn't I,
a slightly different question too, just to even kind of start to round this out, because I think the audience hopefully is taking away a lot around expectations, needs, wants. Would you say in a positive way, because here's the thing, expectations are not demands. Again, we want to correct that. Expectation is not, I expect you to do this and you will do this, right? It's more so about really authentic, transparent communication about what you want and need in a relationship, and those hopefully align with each other. So would you agree that you both have a positive expectation that you two would come to each other with anything, any challenge, and be able to work through it?
Oh, absolutely. I think so.
Yeah, no, that's automatic. I think that's...
it's not even in question.
See, but that's it, for most couples, that isn't necessarily automatic.
Yeah.
Or at least have been expressed.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, like they don't necessarily have that expectation of each other of, you will bring anything to me. We can talk through anything. There's a lot of what we see as withholding, or I don't want to rock the boat, so I'm not going to bring that up. Yeah. So we started early on with an expectation of, no matter how confronting it is. Last week, we had a couple very open, challenging conversations with each other, but we wanted to catch it a week in instead of a year in.
I think what's interesting to your point is, because we are doing that, and we started off strong, so it's sort of easy to sort of maintain things and to pull out of a hole. But we also hold each other, we call bull on each other.
Oh,
like
nice.
we're pretty candid. So like
what's that look like?
Like in the workforce, it's like as you get higher in the organization, that's the hardest thing to get, because you're influencing somebody's paycheck. Maybe they're a partner, who knows what, but there's agendas. And so when you get really up there into the celebrity, even the influencer mindset, you can't actually get good information. And if you can't get good information, you can't make good decisions. And as a leader, you're always looking forward. So if you have bad data, you can't design a great thing. And so for us, like when we come home, it's just like all that stuff is like, we're husband and wife. There doesn't matter what we're doing, and it's like, there's clarity and there's candid behavior.
Do you literally say "I call bull" on each other?
I don't know what the
know
words
the
that are
verbiage
said.
is.
But basically, you'll
sometimes
call
I
out
can-
if you feel like something isn't.
I can sense Carrie. She's not as expressive, so I usually sometimes.
I think that my face
Yeah.
is more expressive
Yeah.
than my words. You can pretty much look at me and know what's going on.
Yeah. So, I think we were at lunch recently. I'm like, it seems like you're not there. Like I would have to check in, but that's how I can see that she's processing. It's not always negative. It's just that something's happening that's taking her a little more time to think linear or logically about it, and then it'll come out maybe 30 minutes later. Whereas mine, I think. As I hear myself,
Crystallizes as he speaks.
We're
So-
the opposite in
yeah.
our relationship. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll even say to him, I'll say something and then he'll be quiet and I'll be like, "Hello."
yeah.
Like I'm like, "Are you there?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm processing."
Processing.
Yeah.
So it's funny we're the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it happens like in a second. I'm like,
I know.
"Man, can I get just
Because
a minute?
I think out loud and talk out loud, and so I'm like 1,000, 2, 1,000, and then hello, and then he's like, "I just started to think," right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is something we've had to learn about each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me, since you brought up candor, right? There is a book and famous TED Talk about radical candor. And so both the relationship and an organization, it's like radical candor is like the top right quadrant of like 4. And it's like you can be expressive because you care. And in that case, you kind of lean into challenging conversations primarily because you do care and you're out to grow. Then there's different quadrants where you're expressive and you don't care. So you just come off like as an a-hole, right? But then you can also care and not be expressive. And that's one of the places I think couples fall into because that's the not rocking the boat. But what that really leads to is you holding on to things which can really end up bringing up like resentment over time or not feeling understood or the affection. And so that's not a good place either.
Right.
But in the short term, for a lot of couples, it seems like it's okay if I live in that realm. I do care about my partner and I don't want to express. So in the short term, that might be okay, but in the long term, that has really detriment to a relationship and in
Yeah.
the business too.
Yeah, that's playing it safe is the riskiest part of it all. I mean, people that come into our office, I've even thought of it like, okay, is this a weakness? Because I care truly. When I hear someone struggling in their business, and I'll give them a quick breakthrough, and that requires candor, only because that's what I've experienced, and it can save you 18 months. But usually it'll happen where you're in an employee relationship, you have that candor, and boy, they walk away and they think, oh, you fired them, maybe, and you gave them the environment that needed for them to deal with what they really needed to deal with, let's say. And if you do it in a professional and assertive way, not emotionally just unloading on people, then they'll ultimately come back and go, you know what you did, tremendously shifted the way that my life has gone. And at the time I didn't see it, but now I do. And I always try and it's more of like a long-term view. That's what I do. It doesn't always work with Carrie because sometimes it's like, I don't know. I just look at life. I blend.
Compartmentalize
Yeah,
everything.
and so that's my sort of challenge is how do you if she's struggling with something, I want to
Help her have
be
a
there
breakthrough,
and
yeah.
like fix it. But what we learned from you guys, it's like, well, that's not really what is being asked at that moment.
It's asking each other, hey, I either want
Yeah.
you to, this is a great thing. So if your partner's sharing with something with you, and even if you know how to help them with a breakthrough, is ask, would you like me to just listen to you? Or would you like feedback right now? So that you can set each other up for success. And that's
Yeah.
really powerful.
Yep, that's very important.
Yeah.
And then be cautious of key words too, because sometimes
Yeah.
in the workplace it's change. We need you to change, or
We need to
have a
talk. It's
talk.
scary.
Yeah, we need to talk. Like
when you say keywords, you mean even like trigger? 'Cause I
Trigger
remember-
words.
yeah,
I
because
remember
you don't know
were
the
talking about
journey
feedback, right?
other people.
Feedback is a trigger word for
Yeah.
me.
I know, yeah, you don't like
That's
that
the
one.
same for me as we need to talk.
Yeah, exactly.
I have some feedback.
And for me,
I'm out.
I'm saying,
You're like, yes.
Yeah, he's like, bring it on.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. You said that you guys have had some challenging conversations recently.
Yeah.
How do you, knowing what you know and teaching what you teach, how do you guys approach each other when you have something that you're like, this is pretty sensitive or whatever?
Yeah, that's great. And I'll share from my perspective and then yours. So we would go to each other. So what we always say to couples is don't blindside your partner. So don't just, walk into the room blazing and just start divulging. You want to set up a safe space. So we always create context for each other by saying, hey, there's something I realized or I want to share with you. Is now a good time to talk? And we take the mornings to be just for us before we get into work. So we usually meditate and then we'll be able to connect before getting into work. And so then we'll say, yeah, now is a good time. And then we always share our intent first.
Oh, okay.
So we'd say something like, hey, my intention for this conversation is that we both feel understood, that we get even more connected. And so that just sets the energy for the conversation. And we always commit, in my opinion, to coming to each other in a calm energy.
Right.
So we take a lot of ownership for our own feelings. So I can't even think of very many times where we've come to each other in the heat of being upset with each other. Or we always kind of manage our emotions first, then come to each other. Anything more you'd add?
I wouldn't say we've ever come to each other with that energy. It'd be more like we're in a conversation and one starts to share their view, and there are times like I just don't see it that way and I never will. And then you get into like this back and forth where that's where I've really learned need to set these agreements. So I think how we'll conclude this is that you'll always have expectations, primarily because you're going to evolve as people, you're going to evolve as a couple, and so new things are going to come into your awareness, like new expectations. So it's just that you need to share them. And it's the same for agreements. We could set an agreement like there's no cussing, there's no leaving the room without saying anything. And what I found is we may need to adjust the agreements sometimes for new seasons. So that is to say, for me, when I start to feel an elevated level of emotions, I need to request a pause. And so it's like, I'm going to request we pause this conversation and we'll come back in 15 minutes, which gives me the space to kind of like think and process, not just react to what my emotions are wanting me to say. Yeah. And then the next level thing is I've really had to remake this agreement by saying, I need you to honor my request to pause right in that moment and not be like, I'm going to get my last words in. Because if I say, I'm requesting the pause, and then the partner throws in their last couple words, it hurts even more.
Yeah.
Because number one, like an agreement's not being honored, but number two, it makes me feel like I'm getting punched in the gut when I'm trying to make a positive request. So that was a big one, and we've even shared that with another couple. It's like, okay, if you have this agreement as a couple to pause, it really needs to stop right then, and then you do say, well, we'll come back to it in X period of time.
Right.
One more thing I'd add too, because I love the question. What really evolved for us from doing personal development and work with each other, even before we started to do relationship work with couples, was having the mindset that the goal of a relationship is not to keep things always cool and calm, which is what I used to believe. So what I saw in the upbringing was like, don't rock the boat. And if you do, it's going to be this huge blow up. So I either saw just suppression or massive upsets. There wasn't any kind of healthy in between. And so we really built the mindset of our relationship is about growth, and to grow you have to have tension. And there can be positive tension. So we embrace every conversation as an opportunity to get more connected, whereas my old mindset used to be challenging conversations leads to disconnection.
Yeah.
So big mindset change that I think for all of you, just to start to consider that as well. Any final notes you want to make?
That's powerful.
Yeah. Well, for the audience, I wanted to kind of summarize some action steps, as I love to do that.
Yeah, things that you can take away and take on.
So, for me, I'm reminded of kind of 3 areas of expectations. And so for an audience member is listening, it's like, you can go and look at, what expectations did I have sort of from the past that I haven't been sharing and I haven't expressed. So that's really like one place to look at. And then as we talked about, there's like your basic. So you might now come to realization of, well, I have some basic expectations around like the lifestyle, around our family, our finances, our intimacy. But then we all want to grow. And we're all growing as individuals and couples. So then you kind of have a third place is expectations are going to be coming that you didn't know that you had yet. So those are the little aspirational expectations. So that's like the third piece of just being aware of when new expectations from where you want to go together, from your vision, make themselves available. That's when you have some agreements to say, how do we talk about expectations as they come up?
Yeah. So in closing, we hope you all enjoyed this conversation. And if you enjoyed this from Carrie and Patrick, please write in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can watch amazing videos, and we'll have to have them on again. Also, if you haven't read our book, you can actually get a free hard copy. You can see that right there. So go to thenewpowercouple.com, or you can click the link in the show notes. But let's give a big thank you to the both of you. Thank you for being on today's episode.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
We'll have to have you on again because there's a
Yes.
lot of wisdom. Seriously, just having connected with you guys, just our lives have grown, and we're grateful for you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, everyone, we'll see you on the next episode.